Hey, my name is Ethan Myers and I'm 24 years old. I live alone in a small two-bedroom house on the edge of Southound, Connecticut, a town so quiet you can hear the river murmur when the wind shifts just right. The house used to belong to my grandfather. He left it to me when he passed 4 years ago, right after I dropped out of community college and realized I wasn't cut out for lecture halls or student loans. It's nothing special. Faded blue siding, a porch that creaks like it's complaining, and a kitchen where the linoleum curls at the corners. But it's mine paid off with the last of Grandpa's savings, and that's more than most people my age can say. I make a living doing whatever needs fixing. Plumbing mostly leaky faucets, burst pipes, the occasional backed up toilet in one of the old colonials downtown. On slow days, I'll swap out light fixtures for Mrs. Gladys next door, or haul junk to the dump for whoever tips in cash. It's honest work keeps my hands busy and my mind from wandering too far back to the things I'd rather forget. My mom lives 3 states away with her new husband. We talk on birthdays, send the occasional text. Dad, haven't heard from him since he missed my high school graduation. The only steady relationship I've had in years ended when my ex Jenna decided a guy with no 5-year plan wasn't worth the rent on her new apartment. She left the key on the counter and a note that said, "I need more than potential." I didn't blame her. I still have the key in a drawer somewhere next to a stack of unpaid credit card statements. I'm chipping away at $20 at a time. Most nights I come home, heat up whatever's in the fridge, and fall asleep to the sound of late-night reruns. The house feels bigger when it's empty, but I've gotten used to the silence. It's predictable. Safe. That all changed on a Thursday in late October when the sky opened up and refused to close. I was halfway through a beer in an old episode of The Office when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but the caller ID said, Southound Towers, penthouse. Fancy building, new construction, the kind of place where residents pay more for a view than I make in a month. I picked up. Hello, hi, this is Marianne Hart from 12B. I have a leak behind the sofa. It's getting worse. Can you come tonight? Her voice was calm-clipped, like someone used to giving orders and having them followed. I glanced at the clock, 9:47 p.m., and out the window at the rain hammering the street. Normally I'd say call tomorrow, but the desperation tucked under her politeness was hard to ignore. Give me 20 minutes, I said. I grabbed my toolbox, threw on a hoodie, and drove through sheets of water that turned the windshield into a blur. Southound Towers loomed at the end of Maple Street, all glass and steel glowing like a spaceship against the storm. The doorman waved me through without a word. I guess a guy with a toolbox and soaked sneakers doesn't look like much of a threat. The elevator ride to the 12th floor was silent except for the hum of the motor and the drip of rainwater from my hair onto the marble floor. When the doors slid open, I stepped into a hallway that smelled like new paint and money. Apartment 12B was at the end, the door already cracked open. I knocked once. Plumbing, come in. Marianne Hart stood in the foyer, arms crossed still in the charcoal suit she'd probably worn to whatever meeting had wrecked her day. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, a few strands escaping like they'd given up. She was taller than I expected, maybe 5'9" in the low heels, and even exhausted she carried herself like someone who'd never had to ask twice for anything. Except tonight. It's behind the sofa, she said, turning without waiting for me to introduce myself. I'll stay out of your way. I followed her into the living room. The apartment was massive, open-plan, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the river that probably cost more than my house. But it was empty in a way that went beyond furniture. No photos on the walls, no books on the shelves, no throw pillows or candles or any of the little messes people leave when they actually live somewhere. Just a single leather sofa, a glass coffee table, and a half-empty bottle of red wine, breathing beside a single glass. The leak was exactly where she said, a steady drip from the pipe that fed the radiator pooling on the hardwood. I set my toolbox down, rolled up my sleeves, and got to work. She stayed on the far side of the room, perched on a bar stool at the kitchen island, staring at her phone like it might bite her. Every few minutes, she'd swipe sigh and set it down again. I kept my head down, focused on the pipe. The silence stretched, broken only by the rain against the windows and the occasional clink of my wrench. When I tightened the last fitting and the drip stopped, I stood up, wiped my hands on a rag, and cleared my throat. All set. Should hold. She looked up, eyes red-rimmed but dry now. Thank you. I'll Venmo you. No rush. I glanced around again, couldn't help it. Nice place. Must be quiet up here. Too quiet. She said so softly I almost missed it. I should have left then. Grabbed my tools, nodded, and disappeared into the elevator, but something about the way she said it, the way the words hung in the air like they'd been waiting years to be spoken, made me linger. You live alone? I asked. She gave a short, bitter laugh. As of last week, yes. The rain pounded harder against the glass. I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was the wine on her breath, or the way the apartment felt like a museum no one visited. Maybe I was just tired of my own empty rooms. Well, if it ever feels too big, you could always crash at my place. It's cramped, the porch leaks, and the neighbor's dog barks at 3 a.m., but at least someone talks back. I meant it as a joke, a dumb throwaway line to cut the tension. I even laughed awkward and too loud in the sterile space. She didn't laugh back, just looked at me with something I couldn't read. Then she nodded once like she was filing it away. I packed up, gave her my card in case the pipe acted up again, and left. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. By the time I got home soaked and shivering, I'd already forgotten the conversation. Or tried to. The next morning I woke to the sound of knocking. It was 6:47 a.m. The rain had slowed to a drizzle-gray light leaking through the curtains. I stumbled to the door in boxers and an old t-shirt, expecting Mrs. Gladys with another casserole or a complaint about her garbage disposal. Instead, Marianne Hart stood on my porch, drenched, a small black suitcase at her feet. Her hair was loose, now wet strands clinging to her cheeks. She wore jeans and a cream sweater that had seen better days. Her eyes were wide, determined, and just a little terrified. "Your offer," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Does it still stand?" I stared at her, brain still half asleep, rain dripping from the eaves onto my bare feet. "What?" She swallowed. "I don't have anywhere else I want to be." I stood there in the doorway, barefoot and blinking, trying to process the sight of Marianne Hart, penthouse queen, still dripping from the rain on my sagging porch with a suitcase that probably cost more than my truck. The morning air smelled like wet leaves and coffee from somewhere down the block. She shifted her weight, the handle of the suitcase creaking under her grip. "Come in before you catch pneumonia," I muttered, stepping aside. She hesitated just for a second, then crossed the threshold. The floorboards groaned under her boots that looked like they'd never seen mud until today. I closed the door behind her and flipped on the kitchen light. The bulb flickered once, then steadied, casting a warm, uneven glow over the clutter. I suddenly wished I'd cleaned up yesterday's takeout containers, a pile of bills on the counter of the sofa with its permanent dent where I slept most nights. Marianne set the suitcase down gently, like she was afraid it might bruise the floor. She took in the room, the mismatched chairs, the ancient radiator hissing in the corner, the single framed photo of Grandpa and me at the lake when I was 12. Her gaze lingered on the photo longer than the rest. "I can pay rent," she said, pulling an envelope from her coat pocket. 3 weeks, cash. That's all I need. Quiet. A place to think. I rubbed the back of my neck, still half convinced this was a dream. "You don't have to, I insist." She placed the envelope on the counter. 5 crisp hundreds. More than I made in a good week. I'm not here for charity. I wanted to argue, but the look in her eyes, steady, almost defiant, stopped me. "Fine. Guest room's down the hall. It's basic." She nodded, picked up the suitcase, and disappeared around the corner. I heard the door click shut, then nothing. No footsteps, no unpacking, just the soft patter of rain on the roof. That first week we were ghosts in the same house. I'd leave before dawn for jobs: Mrs. Lang's dishwasher, the bakery's grease trap, a rental on Elm Street, with a toilet that wouldn't stop running. I'd come home after dark, boots caked in mud, and find the kitchen light on a plate of something covered in foil on the stove. Chicken and rice, lasagna. Once a steak so perfectly seared I almost cried. No note, just food. Marianne stayed in her room most of the time. I'd hear the shower running at odd hours, the creak of the floorboards when she paced. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of her through the crack in the door, curled on the bed, with a book hair loose, wearing one of my old flannel shirts because her clothes were all dry clean only. She looked smaller without the suit. We didn't talk. Not really. A good morning if we passed in the hall. A thanks for the food mumbled over coffee. I slept on the sofa, blanket pulled up to my chin, pretending the lump in my throat was just from the draft. But the house started to change. One morning I came downstairs and found the pile of bills neatly stacked, a rubber band around them. The takeout containers were gone. The sink sparkled. I opened the fridge and saw groceries, real groceries. Eggs, milk, a bag of apples. A six-pack of the IPA I liked. No note. That night I knocked on her door. She opened it, a crack, eyes wary. "You don't have to clean up after me," I said. "I know." She paused. "It helps me think." I nodded, not sure what to say. "The flannel looks good on you." She glanced down, cheeks pink. "It was in the dryer." "Keep it." She closed the door. I stood there a long time listening to the rain. The second week the silence started to crack. I came home one evening to the smell of garlic and rosemary. Marianne was at the stove, sleeves rolled up, stirring something in my grandmother's cast iron skillet. Her hair was down, curling at the ends from the steam. She didn't turn when I walked in. "Hope you're hungry," she said. "I made too much." I dropped my toolbox by the door. Starving. We ate at the table, actual plates, not paper. She'd found the good napkins, the ones I saved for Thanksgiving. The chicken was tender, the potatoes crispy. We didn't talk much, but it wasn't awkward anymore. It was easy. After dinner she washed, I dried. Our hands brushed over a plate. Neither of us moved away. "You sing when you think no one's listening," I said, breaking the quiet. She froze, sponge mid-scrub. "You heard that Fleetwood Mac. Landslide. You've got a good voice." She laughed, soft, surprised. "I haven't sung in years." That night I heard her again. Through the wall. Not loud. Just enough to carry. I lay on the sofa, eyes open, listening to the notes drift like smoke. The third week the house felt different. Warmer. The radiator still hissed, but the air didn't bite as much. I came home to find the broken shelf in the hallway fixed perfectly level, screws tight. Marianne was on her knees. Toolbox open, hair tied back with one of my bandanas. "You didn't have to," I started. "It was crooked," she said, not looking up. I couldn't stand it. I crouched beside her. "You're good with your hands. Used to build furniture prototypes before the boardrooms." She tightened a screw. Muscle memory. I watched her work. The way her brow furrowed in concentration. The way her fingers moved with precision. She wasn't the woman from the penthouse anymore. She was here. That night I knocked on her door again. She opened it fully this time, leaning against the frame. "Why'd you really come here?" I asked. "You could have gone anywhere. A hotel. A friend." She looked at me for a long moment. "Because you were kind without knowing my resume." "You didn't ask who I used to be." I swallowed. "And who are you now?" She smiled, small real. "Still figuring that out." I nodded. "Take your time." She closed the door. I stood there, heart thumping against my ribs like it wanted out. The next morning I found a note on the counter. Not the envelope kind, just a post-it on the coffee pot. "Thanks for the quiet." I stuck it to the fridge, right next to the photo of Grandpa and me. The 3 weeks turned into a month without either of us saying a word about it. The envelope of cash stayed untouched on the counter, pushed behind the cereal box like a relic we'd both forgotten. Marianne kept cooking, and I kept eating. The house smelled like garlic and thyme most nights, and the radiator's hiss became background music instead of a complaint. I stopped sleeping on the sofa somewhere around week 5. The guest room door stayed cracked open, and I'd taken to leaving my boots in the hall instead of by the door. Small shifts, nothing dramatic, just the slow erosion of boundaries neither of us had named. One Tuesday in November, I came home to find the living room lamp rewired. The old brass one Grandpa swore was vintage, but really just flickered like a dying firefly. Marianne was on the floor, legs crossed, surrounded by wire strippers and electrical tape. She didn't look up when I walked in. "Figured you'd blow a fuse eventually," she said, twisting a cap onto a fresh wire. "This thing was a fire hazard." I dropped my keys in the bowl. "You didn't have to. I wanted to." She clicked the lamp on. Steady warm light filled the room. Better. I stood there watching her pack the tools away with the same precision she used to stir sauce. Her hands were stained with copper dust nails, short and clean. She'd stopped wearing the diamond studs sometime in October. Now her ears were bare, small gold hoops catching the light when she moved. That night we ate shepherd's pie and watched Before Sunrise on the ancient DVD player I'd salvaged from a curb pickup. She sat on the couch legs tucked under her plate, balanced on her knee. Halfway through, Jessie and Celine started arguing about time, and Marianne laughed. Really laughed, head back, the sound bouncing off the walls. What I asked? Nothing. Just, I used to watch this in boardrooms between meetings, on mute, with subtitles. She wiped her mouth with a napkin. Never thought I'd eat pie off a paper plate while doing it. I grinned. Welcome to the other side. She looked at me, then something soft in her eyes. It's not so bad. The next morning, I found the hallway rug re-centered, the one that had been crooked since I moved in. She'd even vacuumed the edges. I didn't say anything, just poured her coffee before I left for a job in the next town over. The habits piled up like snow against the windows.